Welcome to Original vs. Reboot, the show where we take remakes and reboots and compare them to their original film. The film of today is The Thing. Now we're going to be comparing the 1982 version of The Thing to the 2011 version of The Thing. And I know what some of you may be thinking, the 1982 version is not the original. Yes, there is a 50s version, and even further than that there's various novellas and TV shows which are based on the exact same thing. But the John Carpenter 1982 version is the most popular one, and the 2011 one is the most recent attempt at a reboot. The original was directed by John Carpenter, and it starred Kurt Russell. The reboot was directed by Matthias van Heinenberg Jr. The main character was played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and it also featured Joel Edgerton and the guy who got screwed over in the Game of Thrones. Now before reviewing these films, I hadn't actually watched both of them. It's one film that slipped through the cracks through the various years. We all have them, those popular films, well-known films that some of us haven't seen. You know, some people haven't seen The Godfather Part 2, some people haven't seen Scarface, some people haven't even seen Star Wars. For me, John Carpenter's 1982 film The Thing is one of those movies that I just hadn't seen. It meant going into this comparison, I had no preconceptions. I didn't have any particular love for the John Carpenter one, as a lot of people do, so I thought that gave me a good stance to compare the two. So what I did is, I watched the reboot first, thinking I wouldn't have any bias, I'd have no reason to not like it if it's a well-told story like I believe the original was. And this led to some very interesting conclusions, because when I came to watch the original, I very quickly began to realise that the 2011 reboot isn't actually a reboot at all. If anything, it's a prequel. So because I watched the reboot first, or which is actually a prequel as I say, it led to a very interesting viewing experience, because I saw it in that order. I saw the prequel first and then I saw the other film, so I saw what they were trying to do. So what do I mean by it's a prequel for those of you who haven't seen the reboot? Well, in the original 1982 version, a dog comes running to the camp with a helicopter chasing him and people trying to kill the dog. Ultimately the Americans killed the Norwegians because they thought they were a threat to them and they were trying to attack them. The dog is actually one of the creatures. Then some of the Americans, led by Kurt Russell, go off to the Norwegian camp to see why their guys were chasing down the dog, why they came after them. When they get there, they find a burned out facility. There's various things like an axe in the wall, but the main thing they find is a two-headed creature burned out in the snow. When I saw these events in the original, I quickly was able to correlate them with the 2011 reboot, because in the 2011 reboot they focus on the burned out facility. We see what happened in that facility. We see that the Norwegians find a UFO underground. They call in some Americans to help them. They dig out the alien out of the ice. They bring the big block of ice into their place. The alien bursts out one night and all chaos erupts. And through then, one by one, the people are picked off by the creature, leading to various things happening, like the axe being stuck in the wall, which we see in the original, like two people being formed into one to make the two-headed creature, and ultimately that being burned and left out in the snow, and the whole building being burned. So for original versus reboot, we can't really compare the stories because the stories aren't the same. All we can do is compare the two films based on stuff like special effects, storytelling overall, and how good the film is, how enjoyable the film is. Although the 2011 reboot is a prequel, it's not marketed as a prequel. It's marketed as The Thing, as it's a reboot. But it's not a reboot, it is actually a prequel, but since it's being marketed as a reboot, let's treat it as one. One thing I found odd, not odd, but I guess predictable in the 2011 version. The 2011 version has an okay cast, but the most well-known person was Joel Edgerton. And having an actor like that, who's a little bit better known than everybody else, leads to one little problem with films, because there can always be a disassociation there. You always know that unless the character's killed off in the first 5 minutes, and they're just doing a quick cameo, that character's pretty much going to survive to the end, no matter what they throw at him. So having an actor like Joel Edgerton, they're going to get their value for money out of him, they're going to keep him till the end. This leads to some stupid things in the movie. For instance, there's a helicopter crash, and Joel Edgerton survives. About 10 to 20 minutes after the crash, they come back to the camp, and even the cast, even the people in the film say, how could anyone survive? They must be aliens, they must be the creatures. Humans couldn't survive that crash. So they agreed to tie them up. But it's never actually established how they survived the crash. They kind of just brush it off, which is kind of just weak storytelling. They just go, it doesn't matter. Another funny thing in the 2011 version is after the main character is trying to convince everybody that the creature is still at the base even though the helicopter's crashed. They all believe the creature is gone. She's trying to convince them it's still there and that it can actually replicate humans. But they don't believe her, so everybody scatters, goes their own way. Ultimately, one character comes to the main character, they go off to a side room, and it turns out that that other character is the creature. She tries to kill the main character. The main character runs away, gets down a hallway, and towards the end, people see the other creature. Now, nobody at this point has called anybody to go get a weapon, go get a flamethrower, like they do in the original.
Bennings, go get Childs.
What is this? What's going on? Hey, Palmer, what is it?
I don't know. Wait, Childs! Mac wants the flamethrower.
Nobody says that in the 2011 one. Just happens to be a guy walking down the hall with a flamethrower. Why? Why was he walking down the hall with a flamethrower? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but he just appears there, uses flamethrower, as you do. The main thing we need to compare in this film, the main thing that we can compare in this film, is the special effects. These films made 30 years apart, one in 1982, one in 2011. In 2011, the early 2010s, is where Hollywood was going CGI crazy before they should have, because CGI at that time wasn't good. With the exception of stuff like Avatar, which was made in like 2008, 2009, they were perfecting it. But this film doesn't seem to have the budget to do it because their CGI isn't good. All of the creatures have this weird gloss on them and it completely takes you out of it because you know you're watching computer generated images. In the original they're using prosthetics and puppets and all that stuff, which looks far better on film. Now there's always elements where it looks a bit ridiculous, but it generally looks better than CGI even still, unless you've got the highest of high budgets. There's a reason people prefer Puppet Yoda, the CGI Yoda in Star Wars. So overall, I think the creatures look better in the original. The other thing where there's a big comparison is the pacing. So I found myself throughout the reboot picking up my phone, getting distracted, pausing it, going off doing something else like making a coffee or something. I kept getting distracted, it wasn't really keeping my attention, and the scares weren't really that good. Like from a horror perspective, it had its moments, but it didn't have anything special. The 1982 version kept my attention all the way through to the end. Didn't move once, didn't pick up my phone. Great storytelling from an expert director. Both films have a similar runtime, so they should have been able to tell a similar story. Basically, even though they're set in two different camps, it's more or less the same story. A virus taking over and one by one, taking out people. But they seem to focus on weird things with the reboot, to the point where they were just eager to kill off characters. One thing they did in the original very well is I think they made the audience second guess everything. At times you don't know if Kurt Russell's character is infected or is the bad guy. And the storytelling aspect is just really good, keeps the audience on the edge of their seat all the way through. 2011 version seems like a fan film that had a big budget. That brings us down to the final question, which is better? And similar to Psycho, you may not be surprised to know, it's a very easy decision. I'm going with the original. The original, better storytelling, better special effects, and it's a scarier film overall. One that I'd be happy to watch again, and many consider The Thing to be one of the best horror films ever made. If the 2011 version had have been the original film, no one would have ever talked about it again. But hey, maybe someone out there thinks that I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below, which do you think is better, the 1982 version of The Thing or the 2011 version of The Thing? And as I said, the 1982 version isn't actually the original. There is a version of The Thing from the 1950s. And if you want me to compare the 1982 version to the 50s version, just let me know in those comments. And of course, if you haven't seen either of the first two episodes, you can check them out right up here. For now, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for watching, and if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. And for now, we'll catch you next time.